Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Darcy Wing. I am on the Delegate Assembly Task Force, and I will be presenting this MAPE resolution forum. I'm going to give it just a minute here, just in case somebody else enters. We have 17 people. Again, my name is Darcy Wing, and I serve on the Delegate Assembly Task Force. Hello, and welcome to the MAPES Resolution Forum. Today, you'll hear the authors of the resolutions present their resolutions, and will provide time to take questions. As a perk of our union, we govern ourselves. So we get to have as a voice in our own processes. Resolutions are the heart of delegate assembly. The resolution process is designed to make our union stronger and more effective. Before we jump into the forum, we have a few housekeeping items for you. This forum is being recorded, and we'll post a link on the Delegate Assembly webpage at mape.org. We have the audio captions on. We'll also pause for questions after each resolution is explained. You can either enter your question into the chat or raise your hand and unmute when you're called upon. We will screen share each of the resolutions while they're being discussed. You may find copies of the Delegate Assembly copies of them on the Delegate Assembly webpage on mape.org. As we prepare for DA, there are a few reminders for our delegates and our alternates. An email was sent to you on September 12th asking you to RSVP. If you have not RSVP'd yet for DA and cannot find your email, please go on the mape.org website and click on My Portal at the top bar, and you'll log into your portal and you can find DA on the event list. Your registration helps us plan and also confirms that you're coming, so your local knows that if there are any delegate spots open or how many are filled. There's one additional budget forum set for Thursday, September 29th at noon for one final walkthrough through the proposed budget that you'll vote on at Delegate Assembly. And then there's supposed to also be a parliamentarian overview to brush up on Robert's rules and prepare with the delegates and alternates for DA. That is to be determined yet, as we have a new parliamentarian this year. All right, let's jump into the resolutions forums. We're not following any particular order for the resolutions today. The Constitution's Rules Committee will set up a formal order for Delegates Assembly. I'll introduce the title of the resolution, and whoever is presenting the resolution can unmute themselves. After a resolution is explained, we'll pause for questions. And I'm going to apologize ahead of time if I butcher your name. First up is reinstate the Meet and Confer Chair Committee Speaker position to the Executive Committee, endorsed by Meet and Confer Chairs Committee. The lead on this is Maureen Dunaway, and who will be presenting today?
I will.
Okay, is that Maureen?
Yes, it's Maureen.
Okay, go ahead.
So at the last Meet and Confer, or I'm sorry, at the last Delegate Assembly, there was a resolution to pull all three of the Meet and Confer Chair Committee Speaker, the Organizing Council Chair, and the Political Council Chair from the Executive Committee. And that resolution was tabled and postponed indefinitely. After Delegate Assembly, about the time actually that I became the Speaker of the Meet and Confer, just the Meet and Confer Chair Speaker was removed from the Executive Committee. And, you know, there's a lot of history behind that, but basically the Meet and Confer Chairs Committee would like to reinstate the speaker to the role, because the Meet and Confer speaker does still come in an advisory capacity to the Executive Committee, and still comes to the Board of Director in an advisory capacity and is there. And we feel that the voice should be heard of the Meet and Confer speaker. And since the speaker is still attending all the meetings and is still there, we feel that voice should be heard. The Meet and Confer speaker is willing to work with the Board of Directors Governance Committee to further define the role in any way to ensure that stays within the scope and create any needed definitions to address any additional concerns, and has been doing so, and has the support of the Board Governance Committee to work to go forward with this resolution. So I'll take any questions at this time. And so here's the resolution. Basically, all it is to put back as a voting member. And then if you scroll down, I think there's also, because I was asked by the delegate assembly thing, there's also like a spot where the definition of the executive committee has like the members listed, and it has Meet and Confer speaker on there as well. So that's the only things that would change.
Thank you, Maureen. Making sure I'm unmuted. Thank you, Maureen. We'll open it up for questions. If you have any questions, please either raise your hand or type it into the chat, into the comments section. Not seeing any hands raised up. We will go to the next one. Next, we have delegates for small locals. The lead contacts on this one is Cassie Church and Jessica Caractus. We'll be presenting this one today. I am not seeing if either Jessica or Cassie on here. So this can be found on the website as well. So small locals with only one delegate at delegate assembly have a default delegate. There's local presidents. There are a couple locals, from my understanding from the last board meeting, that do not have either a president or a vice president. Megan can probably explain better. Go ahead, Megan.
Hey, Darcy. I could be wrong, but I'm fairly confident that the Constitution and Rules Committee ruled this one not ready for debate, which is probably why the authors are not here.
Perfect. Thank you, Megan. Then we'll go ahead and skip this one. Okay, the next one we have is remove local nominations and local election committee language from the election rules. This is endorsed by the MAPE Board of Directors. The lead contacts are Jackie Blogsfett, Galen Strom, Wai Wong Lee, and Deb Rose and Kent Bernard. Who would like to speak?
I can speak. This is Galen Shostrom. I can speak to this resolution if we don't have anybody else from Local 1001 or Region 10 on the call today. I see somebody who might be Maurice Wilson in the participant list, who was one of the originating authors of this. But assuming that person is going to stay on mute, I can take this.
Thank you, Galen.
Going once, going twice. Excellent. Okay, so in spite of the amount of language that's displayed on the screen here, this one's pretty straightforward in that it strikes all language from the elections rules and the bylaws referring to the establishment and running of local elections and local nominations committee on a local by local basis. The general consensus amongst the authors was that these committees were no longer necessary, since we now exist in a time of exclusively online and centrally managed elections. And so the general motivation was to have language encouraging or perhaps even giving the appearance of mandating these local committees done away with, in order to streamline the nominations process. Now communication, including self-nominations, goes right to the central MAPE elections coordinator. Forgive me if I'm getting that particular title wrong, but those communications are more streamlined, and it hopefully eliminates potential pitfalls for willing and interested nominees to fall through the cracks and not receive the necessary pre-elections information, and then also streamlines the actual elections process themselves, so that when it does come time to conduct these officer elections, we get more people in more elected seats across the state.
Thank you, Galen. We'll open it up for questions. If you have a question, please raise your hand or enter it into the chat.
I certainly encourage anybody to review the actual resolution document if they see fit, but I can summarize the remainder beyond the introductory section. Pretty much everything else is just textual omissions from the various documents we needed them to. There's very little in the way of rewording that went on throughout the rest of these various documents.
Thank you, Galen. Maureen has a question. Maureen?
Sorry, I always looking for the mute button. When I've been on Teams most recently, it's like I'm looking for it in the wrong spot. And then when I've been on Zoom most recently, I'm looking more, anyway.
Like trying to switch from a US car to a British car.
Yeah. And when I'm flipping back and forth throughout the day, I don't know. Anyway, when we talked about this at the board of directors, I thought I had a good grip on it. And I just want to make sure I'm stating this. So basically what this would be is to help with the fact that like some locals just maybe don't have the capacity for like a nominations committee, right? So there'd be like a statewide one that would help with getting people into these positions and getting nominated, so that these positions don't go open. Is that the whole point of this resolution? I just want to make sure I'm restating it properly. Maybe to help people that haven't seen this before.
Yeah, no, that's I think perfectly accurate. They're already as a companion to the previous local elections and nominations committee. There has always been a statewide elections committee. That committee very much still intact, and as you exactly described, is going to officially facilitate elections on a local by local basis as needed.
Right. So they would step in a way that they maybe haven't in the past, is what this resolution would do. I just want to make sure that I'm understanding it correctly.
Yes, I don't think it's ever explicitly stated in this resolution that the statewide committee itself will assume responsibilities it hasn't had before, but I think partly that's because technically it's always been the statewide committee's responsibility to facilitate elections even on a local basis. But the problem was because in the past, the statewide committee might have been assuming that there were local committees doing the work. The work in some cases may have gone undone. But that specific understanding, I don't think is actually written in the text during the resolution.
Okay. All right.
Jackie, you have a question?
Maybe she's clarifying for me.
Oh, yeah, Jackie.
Yeah, if you don't mind, Galen, would you mind? Is it okay if I jump in?
Absolutely. I didn't see your name on the list initially, or else I would have handed you the mic earlier.
Oh, thank you so much for being here. And I was at a local meeting, and now I'm able to jump in a little bit. But I think you're doing a great job, Galen. I think
very much so.
Yes, one more piece, Maureen, to respond to your question of if this was to make it so that this was becomes part of the job of the statewide nominations committee. It isn't meant to increase their workload and ask them to do nominations for the entire statewide, all of the locals, all of the regions, etc. It more so removes this like layer of I guess bureaucracy, or a layer of something that's in between a member and their ability to nominate someone. And it was almost a perceived layer of being in between, because members have always been able to nominate a member or even nominate themselves. But removing the local nominations committee and the local elections committee takes away this step where at locals, the elections committee was asked to like hold on to all of the nominations until the nominations period passed, and then send them to MAPE Central, and then MAPE Central would process those nominations and get people to confirm that they accepted the nominations and et cetera. And so what that did was actually like add a layer of like MAPE business agents and MAPE leaders not being able to see, oh, these locals have no one getting nominated. And it made it difficult for us to know where we needed to put attention into getting people nominated and getting spots filled. Galen, did you mention that we looked through the most recent election results, and did you mention the percentages of numbers of people who were of seats that had nominations?
He
I
did.
did not. So if you have those statistics at your fingertips, let her rip.
Yeah, I know it's in the I think we put it into the resolution, but it's right around half of all open seats in the entire statewide like local executive committees. Half of them had 0 nominations.
I think you read that, Galen, when you were reading the resolution.
Okay, good. And then, it was very similar with delegate assembly. It was just, it was just a little bit off. Like, I think just a little bit less than half of them had no nominations. So we're hoping that this will make it visible and make it very easy for people to know that they don't need to, first of all, the president doesn't have to appoint a local elections committee and a local nominations committee. They no longer have that like responsibility of recruiting people to do that kind of confusing work. I'll be honest, that's my opinion. It's a little bit confusing what the roles are for the local elections and local nominations committee. So the president no longer has to do that, and everyone in the local can be responsible and encouraged to encourage candidates to run and to nominate them and to nominate themselves. So that's what we're hoping this resolution will do.
Thank you.
Jackie.
I was just trying to get the intent and make sure that I understood it, and that, yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Maureen. Good question.
Thank you, Jackie, and thank you, Galen. Is there any more questions? I'm not seeing anything in the chat. Okay, seeing none, we'll go up to the next resolution, which is reimbursement limits for individual meal purchases. The lead contact on this is Ronald Dixon. Who will be presenting?
Yes, I'll be presenting.
Perfect, thank you, Ronald.
Yeah. Yeah, so basically this resolution, so the current for individual meals purchased while performing some sort of union activity, individual meals are currently pegged to the amounts that are allowed in the MAPE employee contract, which are $9 for breakfast, $11 for lunch, and $16 for dinner. And that's been, we came into an issue with, excuse me. So I'm the local treasurer of Local 401 Department of Revenue, and we came into an issue with that because because of the rules are regarding individual meal purchases, and given the fact that we're all, most of us are working from home, and those who are performing like union business are generally not participating in group orders, like attending like committees or what have you. That has essentially required that the various committees that I know my local has is being essentially subject to this particular spending stipulation. So and obviously those dollar amounts are given inflation and given various factors are often not sufficient. So this So this resolution is essentially seeking to do three things. First, it is seeking to decouple that dollar limit from the MAPE employee contract, because there really isn't a need to have that just be linked to what is allowed for like state employee reimbursement. And the second stipulation, or the second thing that this is seeking to do, is to have kind of like a broad policy on the state level, which is essentially kind of the maximum amount, which would be $20 per meal. Get rid of the lunch, breakfast, dinner distinction, and in addition to that, also include reimbursement for additional like gratuity, fees, and taxes. And then the third thing being to allow for local unions to have more restrictive policies based upon what they're comfortable with, what they want to do, et cetera. Essentially, this resolution would essentially empower the locals to spend their dues however they'd like, of course, within reason, to ensure that local members who are participating in various committees or meetings, et cetera, on the local level, can get lunch if that's what their committees or locals allow. So yeah. So it's pretty. So I mean, it's So it's pretty short, straight to the point. Any questions at all? I can definitely take.
Thank you, Ronald. We'll go ahead and open us up for any questions. Feel free to put your questions into the chat or raise your hand and we'll call upon you. Go ahead, Hallie.
I apologize if I missed this. My dogs were barking, but did you say, have you checked with our statewide treasurer to see if we are actually allowed to do this? Like if we're not tied to the contract language?
So I was in communication with let's see. Yeah, so I was in communication with MAPE Central regarding the specific language. Let me just check my notes just to be sure. Yeah, so I was talking to Todd Mackey, and because this issue came about because our local, so 401, just to provide a little bit of background, I won't take too long on this. Historically, back in pre-COVID times, we allowed for group meal orders, and the maximum that our local budget handbook allows is $15 per meal. That, of course, we carried that over to when we started doing these virtual meetings. But then, we learned at some point later that, well, because these are individual meal orders, we are subject to that specific MAPE Central set dollar limit, which is what is tied to the MAPE employee contract with the state. That those dollar amounts, the 9, 11, and 16, are essentially the same amounts that you would get reimbursed up to for doing like state business. So I was communicating with Todd Mackey, et cetera, to say, see, well, where in like the policies on the statewide level does it actually say this? And then from there I took that and then excuse me, and proposed to have these revisions here. And yeah, so to answer your question, yes, it is something that I've been in communication with MAPE Central about. And because I was surprised too, I wasn't aware that was something that was set on the MAPE Central level, and of course, and of course that flows down to the locals. So this seeks to essentially to change that, to essentially increase that cap all around, which would provide the flexibility for locals to set their own policies within, of course, the limitation of $20 per meal, excluding and then plus in addition like taxes, et cetera.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Go ahead, Mike.
So have you checked and gone and say like anywhere from 1 to 5 years back to see what this cost is? And also, if you're, by the language here, $20 for the actual cost of the meal in addition to reimbursement for reasonable gratuity, fees and taxes. Is there a cost amount for the extra work for the MAPE staff to do this? Because there is a cost involved to have the staff now go through collecting receipts, keeping those receipts. It's either scanning them in or whatever, but also the cost from the 9/11/16 to the $20. Do you have that somewhere?
So those are all good questions. Well, first of all, what I'll tell you is that at least on the local level, as like, for example, the local treasurer of 401, I do all the legwork in terms of collecting receipts from those who attend like local committee meetings that allow for lunch reimbursements. I essentially do all of that work, and then reconcile things, put that into my spreadsheets, and then send that off to MAPE Central in one PDF file, which includes like which is the replenishment form to replenish our bank account, including like the receipts, etc., all in order. So obviously, at least on my side of things, on the local 401 side of things, and I would assume any other locals who did this or who would be doing this, there would be no additional cost in terms of MAPE Central staff having to collect receipts or anything. Obviously, so in our case, like if this resolution doesn't pass, it wouldn't change the responsibility of MAPE Central to look at like the receipts that are being provided for reimbursement either. Really, the only thing is just increasing that cap from $11 to up to $20 or whatever each local decides. Like, for example, if this does pass, I would propose to bring it back to $15 for at least for local 401. And in terms of the actual cost of the food, what I can tell you on the local level, because once again, this was written in what I can tell you on our end is that it's going to have a very immaterial cost to given the number of people who do seek reimbursement, given the like we're talking, like I don't have like an exact number, but I say in the resolution, one of the whereas clauses, that it is fairly immaterial. Let's see. Yeah, so increasing meal expense limits would have an immaterial cost impact for the union on the statewide level, while allowing local unions to exercise more discretion over how much they would like to reimburse members for expenses incurred while performing local union business. So, and also, keeping in mind too that, obviously $20 is a lot. Not everybody, like this isn't like once again, on the local level, we don't envision like, people who, just racking up their bill just to get to that amount for the sake of it either. So to answer your question, roundabout way, it's, I would, on the local level, it would be an immaterial cost. And on the statewide level, I would imagine that the cost would be, fairly immaterial as well in the grand scheme of things. So.
Yeah. And I think that's why a lot of companies go to flat fees in the state, is because there is, so if you would contact our MAPE staff, if they had to go through and do this, because it's, if the local treasurers are going to assume these duties, then of course they've still got to be audited, because they've got to, any money going out would have to have records of it. So the local treasurers, but at the state level, any of the statewide, the negotiations, the board of directors, all of these receipts and stuff, it's not a minor thing. We've got the election's coming up, so we've got people volunteering for going out door knocking and stuff like that. All that stuff has to be then collected turned in, and it's not a small task, and that's why I'd like to see something in there. I'd like to see a dollar amount. If it's insignificant, then tell me what that insignificant dollars amount and how you got to that. And if it is, $10,000 a year and, that it costs the staff, then I'd like to know that too.
So to address some of your points, so with regards to, once again, kind of you talking about the receipts and gathering the receipts and whatnot, as I was kind of explaining before, it's in theory not going to increase the number of receipts being processed. It's, like, for example, once again, talking about the local level here, like we have members who are volunteering on committees and who are purchasing meals and requesting reimbursement from me regardless. So the number of receipts that I receive as a local treasurer is not going to go up in theory, as a result of this. But this proposal, if it passes, the only difference is it would allow our local to actually reimburse the full cost of a reasonable meal. So, and as far as so in terms of like local budgetary impact, I mean, I could run like a quick estimate, which once again, assuming everybody is going to be spending, who attends, who actually orders lunches, which is, obviously less convenient with like individual meals, like work from home, obviously, as opposed to doing the group orders. That assumes everyone's going to reach $20, and assuming all the locals are going to have allow the 20 as opposed to a smaller amount like 11, 13, 15, etc. Like really what this does is it provides locals with that discretion to do what they want with their own funds. And on the state level, on the MAPE statewide level, and once again, like, this would in theory not increase the number of receipts that MAPE Central would need to process or need to review. It would purely mean, let's say if someone ordered a lunch and it was $13, well, now they go from $11 to $13 of reimbursement. So in terms of like an actual in terms of like an actual monetary impact, I wouldn't be able to provide an exact dollar amount for a statewide impact, because for those various reasons, like but what I can tell you is that at least on the local level, it's going to be a fairly immaterial impact. And what I can say on the statewide level is that while I don't have a specific dollar amount, obviously you simply can't produce a specific dollar amount. We don't have the future receipts people haven't purchased food for yet. What I can say is that in terms of the overall budget as a whole, it would it's not going to break the bank, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So
Thank you, Ronald. Mike, did that answer your question?
I'll wait for debate during, I mean, I don't want to debate it here. I just was trying to get some information. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Do we have any other questions? We have 2 more resolutions to go through. Okay.
There is one in the chat.
Oh, okay. It says, Deb Heisek says, I don't think we should raise reimbursement rate for internal MAPE employees until the rate for MAPE members from the state is increased.
okay, I don't think we should raise the reimbursement for internal MAPE employees until the rate. Okay, so this is primarily talking. So this proposal is talking about those individuals, who are performing MAPE business, and this is really geared toward like state employees who are performing some sort of MAPE business, like let's say attending a committee meeting or something, like using their lunch break to do MAPE work instead of like doing like a full on like an actual break. So let's see, and then until the rate for MAPE employees, until the rate for, oh, okay, so what you're saying is, I mean, so one of the points of this proposal was to decouple that, because they're really, in my mind at least, there really isn't a reason to have that coupled with it. The financial, like the MAPE financial staff standards, which is where I pulled the language from, which apparently applies, according to MAPE Central, applies to the locals as well. You know, what that says is MAPE uses the same language that's in the state contract, and the state contract provides those dollar amounts. Well, that's, in my mind at least, pretty arbitrary, and it limits locals from being able to provide fair reimbursement, you know, especially with, you know, inflation, et cetera. You know, beyond everything else. I mean, pre-COVID, like, you know, our local reimbursed up to $15. And now, you know, during / post-COVID, you know, it's obviously gone down to $11, except for, you know, we haven't had any, you know, in-person committee meetings, obviously. So, yeah, so I guess I don't see the desire, or I guess I don't understand the desire for keeping that coupled with the state one, or the state language. I don't see the need.
Great, thank you, Ronald. Any
Yeah,
other
yeah.
questions?
And if anyone has any other further, oh, I see
Okay,
another one.
Brian
Sorry.
has a question.
What
Brian is
rational-
asking, what's the rationale for including gratuity? This is voluntary, and if this is included, may I suggest that reimbursement be limited to a specific percentage for consistency?
Brian, that is a really good question. And, you know, and I'm definitely open to amending to allow for a specific amount. I mean, the current language of this is, you know, it talks about reasonable gratuity, and on the, at least on the local level, in the budget reimbursement handbook that I wrote, we do have a specific gratuity cap for any expenses that do allow for a gratuity, and ours is 20%. So if you were to reimburse for over 20%, then we're not going to reimburse for that. Now, I kept the language, you know, intentionally broad here to empower locals to, you know, set their own limits and not be restrictive. You know, that's, you know, one of the objectives of this resolution is to provide that local empowerment in that respect. Like if a local entity wanted to donate with their own funds, you know, allow up to 25% or something, you know, that would be within their purview. But what we do on the local level at revenue is the 20. So that being said, yeah, I mean, if it would make members, the delegates more comfortable to have, like, you know, change the language of the resolution to include, like, you know, the with you know, and additional reimbursement for reasonable gratuity up to 20%, let's say, you know, and then fees and taxes, I would be totally in favor of that if that would make, you know, members / delegates more comfortable.
Thank you, Ronald. And maybe President Dayton can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that because these are posted currently, we would have to wait to delegates assembly to make motions to make changes, just as a reminder. And Brian said he thinks that would be more consistent. Thank you. Okay, any more questions? We have 2 to go. Seeing none, our next resolution is to make all MAPE documents accessible. This is passed by local 1101 executive team, regional level director Jessica Raptis, and local 2101 President Elizabeth Pearson. Lead contacts are Rosie Weidel and Rob Hobson. Is there anybody that's going to be presenting this one today?
This is Rosie Weidel. I wasn't prepared to present this, but I am able to do so. We would like for MAPE to truly become more accessible to people with disabilities. One of the major problems that we have had in our local is that people get emails that they can't read, and because they're not made correctly. There's a right way and a wrong way to make documents. So what we're asking is we want MAPE to follow what's mandated by the ADA and Section 508, which is part of the ADA. I'm not expecting everybody to know all of these things, right? And specifically WCAG. The WCAG has to do with digital accessibility. It's misspelled down there. Somebody has WCGAG, but it's actually WCAG. Anyway, we want MAPE to recognize that all members are equal and should have equal access, that there are many training programs and resources that are available that would not be an undue burden. For example, on the Minute website for accessibility, you can take 9 short courses on how to make documents accessible, and it takes half an hour. So everybody in MAPE could take those classes and be done. I mean, some people will be slower than others, but that might be a good place to start. We would like all documents and all pages and all emails, the main website, social media, training documents, and organizing tracking tools to be made accessible, or accessibility needs to be thought of every single time something is purchased by MAPE, especially software that also you may have employees with various disabilities too, beyond our members. So the costs can vary widely. Like I said, there's no cost. There are a lot of free trainings out there. There's moderate costs. A moderate cost might be to hire a business to come in and remake digital accessibility forms. It would really depend on what MAPE wanted to do with this. But there's also a lot of resources in your union that would be that might possibly be interested in volunteering to help. We would like these action steps to be initiated immediately. We would like existing forms. There are forms that members are expected to fill out that aren't accessible. So they have to be sent to those of us who know how to make things accessible. And then we have to take our time to make them accessible, when really this should have been done before it was even sent out. So this is something, again, that goes under the ADA. So our recommendation is we want accountability to be placed on all MAPE staff, board of directors, and statewide and local presidents. We would like the board of directors to write a policy regarding truly implementing accessibility. And we would also like status reports on the progress with making things more digitally accessible, especially to members.
Thank you, Rosie. And I do see that Mike has his hand up. Go ahead, Mike.
So my question, in there, you say all MAPE documents will be accessible to all MAPE members. I guess I have a problem with that, because we have some confidential things, especially like our staff, that when they go through and get job reviews and stuff like that, we don't want those accessible to others. And the way it's written, you've got all, and I get what you're trying to do. You want to have our documents so that people with disabilities have access to them and can access them in multiple ways. But the way it's written, you have all MAPE documents are accessible to all membership and MAPE staff. And that is, I don't think that's doable. I don't think it's legal.
So here's the thing. I think that there's a misunderstanding of the word accessible right here. So the way that I'm using this is not to say that every document that's confidential be made so that everybody can, I'm trying to figure out the distinction. If
Yeah,
anybody
yeah,
can step in. So what I'm trying to say is that there are members, there are employees of MAPE itself that have disabilities. And we are not prioritizing. You're saying that only if you can read, can you view this document? Thank you.
Yeah, and I get what you're trying to get at, but in your resolved, that has to change in order, I can't see it passing there, because the way it's written, and we gotta take it literally, it is all MAPE documents. And that's 100% of them. That's not
Right.
the ones that we
Well-
pick and choose. So I think that's something that you'd have to change in order, and I do understand what you're saying. We have people with disabilities on the board, and we're continually trying to get documents that not only are accessible, but that even meetings like this, where you know, if there's certain documents pop up on the screen, they've got screen readers, and that's hard for them because it's some things are, like in this case, they're in blue section, you know, it says section 508. That's in blue. That doesn't come through in a screen reader. So those are things that that we know, and those are things that we're working on. But again, the way it's written, I think I'm trying to give you pointers to get it through, because I think it's something that is important. But I also want it to be worded correctly so it does go through.
Okay, I am just fine with updating the resolve. We are just fine with updating the resolve. Galen had suggested all MAPE documents will conform to accessibility standards in line with section 508 guidelines. Now, one of the things is that I'm not saying that they have to be immediately 100% done this year, you know, but there needs to be action on this. This cannot, you know, it's lip service right now until things are done. So that's, I mean, that's really what we're advocating for right now. So I'd be happy to change that. Unfortunately, the wording that is used all over the world with regards to digital accessibility is the accessibility. So even though it has multiple meanings, that's the word we have.
Thank you. Thank you, Rosie. I'm going to go ahead and read the chat, and then I'm going to call on Galen next. So Galen had mentioned in the chat, accessibility does not equal availability in this case. And then Nicola says, good thought, Galen. You typed faster than she did. And then Galen says, perhaps an update to resolve all MAPE documents to conform accessibility standards within section 508 guidelines. And Susie says she's like that. Galen, would you like to elaborate?
Not actually an elaboration, but just a sort of question for further discussion, probably at a later date, given that we're running out of time for today. But I was just curious if the authors and collaborators involved in this already have a advisory council or advisory individual within MAPE staff or the elected officer pool in mind to sort of quarterback the drive for, or I should say the process for increasing accessibility among MAPE documentation. Again, that it doesn't necessarily have to be called out in the language of the resolution itself, but I'm just curious because I agree that this is a highly important goal to have, and I would hate for the resolution to pass only to then have the actual work delay or languish because we don't yet have the human resources in place to devote the definite time needed for it.
May I respond?
Of course.
Okay. So I'm trying to what I'm hearing you say is that, is there a MAPE person, like within the state, that not in MAPE itself, but a member that is willing to stand up and say, I will help you guys make this happen? Is that what you're asking? Or are you saying?
It could be staff or member, anybody, you know, just a person with the necessary expertise and familiar person or people, certainly. I mean, and this sort of work does, I think, lend itself well to committee rather than individual, just because there's review and re-review that needs to happen with it, in my limited experience. And the only reason I'm even really asking about this now is because if there has been a sort of structure or individual identified to at least begin taking this on, I do kind of wonder if it's worth including that in the language of the resolution. And again, I know that we're limited in how we can alter the resolution ahead of the delegate assembly. But if there is a way to include some language of how this process will actually shape up, who will conduct it and who they'll be responsible to, there's a little voice in my head that just says, you know, it's never a bad idea to hold ourselves accountable to the goals whenever we can by, you know, by describing what our plan is. And if there's a possibility of including that in the resolution itself, I wonder if that's worth considering.
Okay, I think that's a very valuable comment. There is something called digital accessibility coordinators, that it's actually a job position, that's a MAPE job position. And you could put out a call for volunteers. It's possible that people on MAPE itself, the staff, the board of directors, statewide local presidents might want to talk about this first and kind of decide what they want it to look like. But I'm sure that you will have volunteers for either a council or for something. I don't know if it needs to go in the language at this time, because in my opinion, it should be bigger than, I don't know.
Yeah, no, I take what you're saying, Rosie.
Yeah,
Thank you. For the
No,
response
thank you
to
too.
the additional discussion. I'll mute now. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Galen, and thank you, Rosie. Mike, would you like to go ahead?
Yeah, just one quick comment. Please get a hold of Leah Soho and she is our communications director, and she should be able to let you know what we currently have, because we as the board have been working on this, and that doesn't mean all documents are accessible, but that is the goal. And she would be able to better fill you in on where we're at and what we're doing, because she sends out things, from the legislature and everything that's 88 compliant, and that is our goal. And if you see some areas, maybe there's specific things that you see all the time, and we need to know that, because we can't fix it if we don't know it. But Leah would be the person, and please contact her, and she'd be a great resource.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike, and thank you, Rosie. Just quick, Liz Martin has put in the chat, and sorry, I'm having mouse issues with having 3 monitors. She says she knows for sure that there's some MAPE staff. I look like I'm chasing squirrels. Sorry. She knows that there's MAPE staff members who would love to help join and support this conversation. She's happy to talk to everyone. Leah says, and put her phone number in the chat, and says, or leahsolo@mape.org. Seeing that we're running low on time, we have one final resolution that just came in to us while we started this forum. So I greatly appreciate everybody taking your lunchtime. So Cynthia, is there something that you would like to pull up?
Yes, one moment.
And while Cynthia pulls that up, I'm just going to say that that this is being recorded again, and it will be posted on the web, in the portal or on the MAPE website. So it looks like, oh, you scroll back down, I can't see what the title is. Delegates Assembly resolution is to establish a requirements for regional negotiator position. And it looks like this is by Mike Purdue, Maureen Dunaway, and Eric Later of Local 501. Contact is Michael Purdue. And I'm not sure if there's anybody here that would like to present this or not.
If Michael's not here, I can explain it because he explained it to me and I co-signed it.
That would be great. Thank you, Maureen.
Okay, so basically what Michael's resolution is that you should have some skin in the game. Can you scroll? I don't see his resolution up. Okay. That basically the negotiations, representative must not be expected to retire or leave state service before the implementation of the contract they're negotiating. So basically what they're saying is you shouldn't be running for the position if you're not going to be subject to the contract that you're going to be negotiating for. If you're not planning to like leave right away, or if you're not planning to retire right away, that you should have some skin in the game. That's basically the entire purpose of his resolution.
Great. Thank you, Maureen. Does anybody have any questions? I'm not seeing anything in the chat and I'm not seeing any hands. So if there's no questions, then we'll wrap up our forum. Again, we're recording and it'll be posted on the MAPE website. If you have additional questions about a specific resolution, contact information for the authors are on each one of the resolutions and are posted on the MAPE webpage. Thank you for taking the time to hear your fellow MAPE members and the ideas for making our union stronger. Thank you again and have a great day.